The median net worth of an American household is about $190,000. The average is over $1 million. Both numbers describe the same country at the same time. One is useful, the other is a distortion so extreme it should come with a warning label. Yesterday we talked about what changes after $10,000, the threshold, the 3 doors, the protocol. Today's question is harder. Where does the average person actually stand? And why average isn't a benchmark, it's a warning. When I first pulled every public data set on American household finances into one place, the picture they painted stopped me cold. And I'm Warren. I've spent years inside these numbers. This pattern, is the reason this channel exists. The top 10% of American households hold about 2/3 of total wealth. The bottom half holds less than 3%. When a data set is that warped, the average becomes meaningless, like calculating the average net worth of a bar where 9 people have $100,000 and 1 walks in with $1 billion. The average says everyone's rich. The median says almost nobody is. A compliance officer in Chicago, 34, household income above the national median, sat across from her own data for the first time on a Sunday night. Legal pad, highlighter, bank statements spread across the kitchen table. Her number, on paper, looked like the data we're about to walk through. Average? Normal? Fine? It wasn't fine. But that comes later. First, the data itself. Here's where it starts to get uncomfortable, but the Fed's Consumer Finances Survey, the gold standard of household wealth data, breaks everything down by age. Households under 35, median net worth of about $39,000. That's everything owned minus everything owed. For most people in this bracket, the biggest asset is a car that's losing value every month. And the number jumped sharply from 3 years earlier. But that was mostly housing inflation and pandemic savings that have already been spent. The habits didn't change. The underlying structure didn't change. The number went up. Everything else stayed the same. By peak earning years, mid-40s to mid-50s, the median household has less than $250,000. That's supposed to be the summit of an entire working life, and most of it is locked in a house that can't be spent. Strip out the home and liquid net worth, the money that could actually be deployed tomorrow, drops closer to $40,000 or $50,000. The Chicago compliance officer? She fits right in that trajectory. 34, on track to peak with $250,000 in total net worth by her 50s, mostly home equity she can't touch. Her liquid savings at the time she ran the numbers, about $8,000. Below the threshold from yesterday's video, below the line where the brain switches modes. Now, here's the number that should genuinely concern everyone watching this. By the time a household reaches retirement age, the median sits at roughly $360,000. Sounds like a lot until the math runs. 4% withdrawal, about $15,000 a year. Add Social Security, roughly $22,000. Total, about $3,000 a month, after 40 years of work. Picture that. Tuesday afternoon at a pharmacy, a prescription costs $84 and the checking balance says $412. The person does the math in their head, rent due in 9 days, groceries this weekend, the electric bill still pending. The $84 isn't a question of whether they can pay it. It's a question of what they can't pay if they do. That constant, quiet tightness, that's what $3,000 a month feels like at 62. Not poverty, constraint. And constraint after a full career is the output of a system that nobody redesigned along the way. Nobody told this person they were on the wrong track. The paychecks kept coming, the rent got paid, the retirement account had something in it. Everything looked fine from the outside, and inside, the numbers were silently producing an outcome that nobody would have chosen if they'd seen it coming. But here's the thing that kept me up when I first put these datasets together, and this is the part most financial content doesn't touch. Everything just described is only the asset side. Now flip the ledger. Total consumer debt hit a record in late 2025, almost $19 trillion. The average household carries roughly $100,000 in debt, mortgage, auto, student, credit cards. But the category that destroys wealth building isn't the biggest one. It's the smallest. The average household with revolving credit card debt owes about $10,800. At roughly 22% interest, minimum payments only, that balance costs nearly triple over its lifetime, about $28,000 total. Same compound interest equation that builds wealth in a brokerage account. Same math, opposite direction. And here's the connection to yesterday's video that makes this concrete. The $10,000 threshold, the line where the brain shifts from survival to building. The average household has that exact amount, except it's not in savings, it's on a credit card. The gears are turning, just backward. The compliance officer in Chicago ran her own version of this math on that Sunday night. Mortgage, $1,400. Car payment, $520. Credit card minimums, $340. Student loan, $280. Insurance, utilities, groceries, phone, another $2,000. Total fixed outflow, about $4,500. After-tax income, $5,200. The gap, $660 a month. She put the highlighter down and stared at the number. $660, that's the entire margin for saving, investing, emergencies, clothing, entertainment, and anything that might count as a life. And she earns above the median. She asked the obvious question, where did the money go? And the answer wasn't restaurants or impulse purchases, it was structure. The car payment alone, $520 a month on a vehicle she bought at 27 because the previous one broke and she needed to get to work, costs about $37,000 over the 6-year loan. The car depreciates to maybe $12,000 in resale. A net loss of $25,000 to own a machine that bleeds value every month it sits in the driveway. But here's what makes this important. That wasn't a bad decision, it was the normal decision. The decision the system presents as default when a car breaks down and the person needs to get to work Monday morning. The dealership offers financing, the bank approves the loan, the monthly payment fits inside the budget, barely. And nobody in that chain of transactions mentions what the car will cost in total, or what that $520 a month could have become if it had gone somewhere else for 20 years. The system isn't predatory in any dramatic sense. It's just optimized for extraction by default, and the person inside it doesn't see the optimization happening because each individual step looks reasonable. There's a dark comedy to this, actually. She's a compliance officer. Her job is making sure systems follow the rules, and the system she lives inside follows its rules perfectly. The rules just weren't written in her favor. The savings rate makes the picture worse. A generation ago, Americans saved about 12% of disposable income. Today, it's around 4 to 5%. On the median income, that's barely $300 a month. Here's what that feels like in practice. Every unexpected expense over that amount, a brake job, an urgent care visit, a busted water heater, erases a full month of progress. 2 bad months in a row and the savings balance is back where it started. The household isn't building. Household? It's treading water with the surface at chin level and every ripple pushes it under. But here's where the math turns genuinely brutal. And it's worth pausing for this one. At the old savings rate of 12%, that same household would put away about $700 a month instead of $300. The $10,000 threshold would arrive in just over a year instead of nearly 3. And here's the detail that makes this more than just arithmetic. Over a full career, the difference between those two savings rates, 7 percentage points, isn't marginal. It's the difference between retiring with enough to live with freedom and retiring into constraint. Same income, same city, same commute, same coffee order. The only variable that changed is the percentage that got captured before the brain had a chance to spend it. The gears turn either way. The question is, for whom? Something about this data that most channels won't say, and it needs to be said. This isn't a lecture about discipline. The compliance officer in Chicago isn't undisciplined. The substitute teacher in Raleigh isn't lazy. The system these people live inside was designed, not maliciously, but systematically, to make extraction automatic and building voluntary. That's not a conspiracy. It's an incentive structure. Banks profit when people borrow. Retailers profit when people spend. The entire consumer economy is optimized to keep the gap narrow and the debt compounding. The average person isn't failing inside that system. They're performing exactly as the system was designed to make them perform. The deeper pattern behind all of this is one that most financial content completely ignores. The extraction side of the average household, interest, fees, penalties, runs on autopilot. It doesn't need an app, a decision, or a moment of motivation. It just takes. Think about what that looks like on a Thursday night at 11. The phone buzzes, a credit card notification. Statement ready. Minimum due in 14 days. The extraction system didn't ask. It accrued interest on the balance, added the amount, and sent the alert. Now compare that to what building looks like. Opening a brokerage app, choosing an amount. typing it in, hitting confirm, wondering if this month is the right time. Second guessing, postponing until Friday, forgetting. That's automatic extraction versus voluntary building, and in that gap, the average outcome gets manufactured. The compliance officer understood this the moment she saw it on the legal pad. She didn't need a lecture about compound interest. She needed to see the structure she was inside, laid bare, numbers visible, highlighter marks on every line that bled money. And once she saw it, the question wasn't, why am I stuck? It was, why would anyone expect a different result from these settings? A substitute teacher in Raleigh, 29, earning about $44,000, showed me what happens when the settings change. She'd been saving nothing for 3 years. Not careless, compressed. The gap between income and outflow was about $400 a month, and every time she tried to save, something ate it. Then she did one thing: set up an automatic transfer of $150 every 2 weeks into a savings account at a different bank, one she deliberately didn't link to her debit card. 14 months to hit $10,000. She still had emergencies during those months, still had tight weeks. But the transfer ran regardless, and because it moved before she saw the money in her checking account, her brain never registered it as available. She described the moment she checked the balance and saw 5 digits for the first time, sitting in a Starbucks drive-thru on her phone, waiting for an iced coffee. She said she just stared at it. It didn't feel real. That's the threshold crossing, not a celebration. A quiet moment in a drive-thru lane where the screen shows a number the brain has never seen in its own account. That story isn't unusual. It's actually the median case. The people who cross the threshold don't do it through windfalls or dramatic income changes. They do it through automated, invisible, boring transfers that the conscious mind barely notices. And that's exactly why it works. The brain can't negotiate with something it doesn't see happening. Building wealth isn't about being smarter than the system. It's about building a counter system that runs on the same principle: automation. If you watched yesterday's video, the protocol is the first layer: baseline calculation, 70-30 split, automated transfer. Today's data shows why that protocol isn't optional. Because the default path leads to $3,000 a month in retirement after 4 decades of work. That isn't poverty, but it's a life where every decision bends around a number that should have been larger. Here's the uncomfortable truth: knowing these numbers changes nothing by itself. Information isn't transformation, but not knowing them guarantees one thing: the average outcome. And the average outcome doesn't expire, it compounds. Every year inside the default settings costs, not dramatically, not in a single catastrophe, but in fees paid, returns missed, and options that quietly close while nobody's paying attention. The compliance officer in Chicago changed one setting. The substitute teacher in Raleigh changed one setting. Neither earned more, neither got lucky. They changed the structure, and the structure did what structures do. It ran. If you don't make that change in the next 3 to 5 years, the math is straightforward. You become the person at 62 standing at the pharmacy counter, doing quiet arithmetic on an $84 prescription. Not because you failed, because you never unchecked the box that was pre-selected for you. That's the cost of average. And the only tool that works against it is architecture: automated, invisible, running whether you feel motivated or not. Tomorrow, the paradox that breaks most people's mental model of money. Households earning $300,000 a year with zero saved. The high-income poverty trap. If you think income is the variable that matters, tomorrow will change your mind. The person earning $70,000 with the right architecture will outperform the person earning $300,000 without it. The math on that one is uncomfortable, in the best possible way.